For our first ever CREC Talk Shop session, I'm excited to introduce our special guest, Matt Dunn, Senior Real Estate Manager with McDonald's Canada. Matt began his real estate career in Calgary in 1987, working with Trilea as manager of Macleod and Trans-Canada shopping malls in Calgary. From there, he progressed through shopping center opportunities in mall management and leasing in Toronto at Scarborough Centre, and then Saskatchewan at Town and Country Mall in Moose Jaw, then back to Toronto with Ivanhoe Cambridge at Upper Canada Mall, as well as managing multiple properties for Loblaws with Centre Corp. In 2003, Matt used his landlord knowledge to co-found a national tenant rep boutique firm called Rocket Retail in Vancouver that represented a full range of national tenants. In 2013, he joined McDonald's to manage real estate in Alberta. Thankful to have the knowledge and perspective from both the tenant and landlord sides. Matt, welcome to CREC Talk Shop.
Thank you very much, Slava. And I officially feel old after hearing all of that, where I've come from and where I've been. And thank you to the whole CREC for giving me the opportunity to speak today. And it's an honor to be the first one out of the gate here. So with no further ado, I'll just jump right into things, and I'll try and give you as much insight as I can in regards to sort of growing trends with McDonald's. And I've had the honor of being with McDonald's for almost 9 years now. And even in that relatively small time period, there's been a lot of changes, a lot of evolution. And McDonald's is the type of company that they say one thing is constant, and that's change. That's evolution with them. And I think everybody on the call here has experienced, some kind of evolution with McDonald's, whether it's been one lane drive-through has now evolved to two. Instead of ordering from right up from the cash, now you can order from mobile ordering to the actual screens as you come into the restaurant. So we're constantly evolving. And on that note, I'll sort of share with you one of the most popular trends that we're seeing that is affecting our sales in a very good way. And that's Uber Eats, Skip the Dishes, and McDelivery apps. They've completely accelerated because of COVID as well. The complete evolution has really driven our sales market. To the point where during COVID, we didn't see a bump in the sales at all. Our sales never took a hit because everybody discovered our drive-throughs, and it was a savior for a lot of families, a lot of people who wanted a meal and wanted the convenience of going through our drive-through for that. But on the delivery end of things, especially, because on the delivery end, obviously people stuck in their homes, they were able to get on their apps, get into Skip the Dishes and Uber, and order their meals. So much so that we're creating a separate booth area within our restaurants in order for these Skip the Dishes and all these other delivery companies to come in, and they can actually have a dedicated area to pick up the meals, so it's not disrupting the entire restaurant. So to the point where there's separate entrances as well. So the other area that we're seeing is the drive-through, as I touched on before. And with the drive-throughs, we're evolving because they're so popular. We're actually going to be evolving to 3 lanes. And so we're test marketing it right now. So probably won't see it next year, but in a couple of years, I can see us evolving into having 3 lanes because of the efficiencies of getting cars in and out. Even with our drive-throughs now, we have what's called an escape lane. And we also have 3 windows where our competitors typically might have 1 or 2 windows. And what that translates to is people can pick up their orders quicker. So you can have 1 cash, you can have two pickup windows. And if something messes up in the line, God forbid, or somebody changes their mind, they have the option to just veer out and go into our escape lane and jet out. And with that as well, with the efficiencies, we also have delivery stalls. So we've got a minimum of 5 stalls now, where if the line gets backed up, then we can refer those people to those parking stalls, and they'll have to wait just a short minute or two for their meal to come out. But again, that translates to efficiencies. And I think in our industry, we get beat up a lot because of certain locations have congestion. certain competitors might have congestion within their drive-throughs, which affects parking and it affects the flow within in shopping center areas. But we've got one of the fastest ones, obviously, in the industry. What is this going to happen? The other thing too, with COVID and everything that's gone on with what I've just explained, with our efficiencies, with Uber Eats, with the apps, it's created some record-breaking sales for us. So there's been a new mandate in Canada to open up an unprecedented amount of stores in the next 3 years. So you're going to see plenty of development with McDonald's, and I could feel the pressure over the last year on my side to try and open locations. And Alberta is one of the fastest growing markets with McDonald's in North America. So we've got a great demographic market here, or in Western Canada, you could say, for that matter. And to the point where we've always been shy about going into smaller markets. And smaller markets, we felt we wouldn't be able to make it because our restaurants are quite large. We have a vast amount of food to pump out. So half our restaurants, half the size of our restaurants is actually kitchen, which is what people don't probably realize. You've got our smaller competitors like Tim Hortons and Wendy's. They can easily pivot into these smaller areas. So smaller premises, smaller land size, that's prohibited us in the past from going into certain locations. And a lot of times they've been able to cherry pick some of the best locations. So we're pivoting now, and we're making our restaurants a smaller footprint in some cases, but we're also looking at smaller towns too. And that's where you see the likes of A&W and Tim Hortons have jumped into these smaller towns, and they've done extremely well. Dairy Queen's another one, to name a few. So recently, we just opened up a location in Sundre, which is northwest of Calgary by about an hour's drive. And it's just west of Olds. And it's a smaller town. It's about 3,000 people. And when I first broached McDonald's on it, and I did some homework, and I found out, there's a ton of recreation traffic moving through there on the weekends. And there's also some main highway junctures that go through there. So I think my company thought I was nuts when I broached them on this, because the smallest town we had been in up until that time period was around 8,000 people. So needless to say, I had to bring a number of VPs up there to try and convince them. And all eyes were kind of on that site to see how it was going to do. Sure enough, it opened with record-breaking sales, and it still continues to do that. And it's just a pretty amazing trend that we're seeing. So in turn, it's really kicked open the doors for us to look at smaller markets like Fort Macleod, Crossfield, that we'll be going into, Invermere, that we're going into as well. And I think that the secret to some of these sites that people didn't realize was the surrounding hamlets have a large population, or the recreation traffic, like I mentioned. Also, the Aboriginal population is very difficult to track and find, but in some areas, it's explosive, especially in southern Alberta. So these are kind of golden nuggets of information that are very critical to the sales and to growing our business. One other aspect too that we've shied away from is any non-drive-through sites in a suburban area, and it's always been taboo for us to do that, because our drive-through brings in approximately 67%, 68% of our business, which is a huge, large chunk, and so we're always trying to err on getting we call it a trad, but sort of a ground lease location where we can get a drive-through. So that's why you're not seeing a ton of growth within shopping centers with McDonald's, and we've gotten away from that. But with this, we're opening up our second non-drive-through suburban site in Western Canada in Mahogany, which is in the southeast of Calgary. And it's an explosive growth area with small families, high density. It's a very successful kind of area to put a restaurant in my view. But when we first tried to get in there, they had a restriction on drive-throughs. You cannot get a drive-through in Calgary within a 400-meter radius of an LRT station or a future LRT station. So we had our hands tied, and we hummed and hawed on this for a couple of years. And finally we said, let's pull the trigger. We have no choice here. And so we did, and we're going to open up in another month or two, but I can tell you all eyes are going to be on that location. And I'm going to bet that that's going to be another sort of record-breaking location there as well. And by the way, our only other site, in case you're wondering, is in Fort Mac. So, I mean, you can see why we would want to do it in Fort Mac too, with such a great market up there. I've been rambling on for a long time here, but does anybody have any questions? And sorry, I should have paused there at a couple junctures. But does anybody have any questions thus far?
A quick one off the top of my head, Matt. With the non-drive-through locations in Mahogany and Fort McMurray, are you able to achieve lower rents there that kind of offset for the potentially lower sales?
You know what? That's a very good question. And unfortunately, because it's such a popular area, for that particular location, maybe not as much. But in other locations, you're onto something. And that's something where we can have a smaller footprint too, because we don't have the drive-through. So yes, there is some economies of scale there for sure. The other economies of scale that we're seeing too is what's called Oil Alliance. And what it simply is us partnering up with a gas provider. And so what will happen is that we will have economies of scale there where we can share the building, we can share the common area maintenance cost, the taxes. We can, some cases, we can share the washrooms as well. So that's where we're finding some efficiencies too, where we can go into these smaller towns. We can be with a gas provider like Sundre, and we can act as sort of a powerhouse because of all the cars that come in to buy all these volumes of gas.
Matt, congratulations on your success in the smaller markets. I note in your bio that you manage TransCanada, Macleod malls in Calgary. Both those shopping centers have been mostly demolished. So you have it's interesting to see how food service and retail evolves. And, smaller market thing is just a gem. Congratulations on the Sundre store. I've been there many times. And will there be a focus on inner city urban business districts, densely populated sections of Western Canadian cities? It seems to me that those would be a real opportunity. I know there's limited opportunities for drive-through, but you see your firm looking at those more closely?
Yeah, so what's happened in the past, Mike, is with the financial matrix, it was very difficult to make that work because of the non-drive-through, like I said before. So now they've adjusted some of those matrices, and that's made it easier for us to go into smaller markets and to look at high density urban areas, which I believe is what you're talking about. I'm a believer in it, Mike. I think it's good. That's going to be my next project in trying to sell my bosses on the importance of that. And I think with COVID lifting now, you're going to see more and more people in the downtown cores. And so it hasn't been too popular, obviously, in the last 2 years, but I think there's some great opportunity because I think there's some motivated landlords out there who would like to see any kind of restaurants down in their buildings and in the core area of downtown.
Thank you.
Matt, we have a question in the audience, and the question is, are you struggling to secure dedicated parking for pickups or delivery in strip mall parking lots?
In some cases, yes. I mean, what we try to do is we try to do it as close to our restaurant as possible. So then the outside areas aren't being affected or the other tenants. So the odd time, yes, I am having difficulties, but for the most part, yes, I am getting 5. I mean, we bring in 500,000 transactions a year to a property. So there is a very big value in having us there, and just not congesting or clogging up other areas of the shopping center because there isn't a parking spot available. Good
Matt,
question, though.
Question for you, Matt. It's good to see you again. It's been a long
Yeah,
time.
you too. It's been a while. I'm in your hometown.
Well, I'm back. My hometown's Halifax now, believe it or not. So.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Couldn't get any further, huh?
Yeah. A question for you about when you're talking about suburban locations, and sometimes you run across the obstacle of zoning where they don't allow drive-throughs. Have you been part of developers that have amended the zoning, and what has been your core argument in getting the rezoning to allow for drive-throughs? And do you see that changing even more now coming out of the pandemic?
It's a good question, and it's complete brain damage, to be honest with you, having to deal with the cities to do that, because they're very rigid, and we try to shy away from that because it's a battle. And we had this battle royale in Calgary, so pardon the pun, but it's in Mount Royal, and it's on 17th Ave. And we just went through an exercise where we needed to rezone because we're redeveloping and relocating on our site, and we actually own the land. And so, I mean, to say it was a dogfight with the city is an understatement. It had to go to city council for vote, had to go to third reading, and it involved lobbying politicians. I mean, it cost us dearly financially. At the end of the day, it's going to be completely worth it. So I think, Kieran, what we would do is we'd have to take a look at the site, and we'd have to make sure it's an absolute dynamite site in order to jump into that. And then what we do is we hire professionals. We hire people because we're experts at real estate, but we might not be experts at rezoning and going through that and maneuvering that. So maybe we'll be knocking on your door here sometime soon.
Do you find the pandemic is changing the role of, has revitalized or re-energized the drive-through movement?
Good question. Yes, it has. And I've seen a bit of relaxation within Alberta. I can't speak for BC and the other places, but yes, I have. They've seen the power of it. They've seen the convenience, to the point where the government asked us to pass out 2,000 masks during the first wave of the pandemic. Did I say 2,000? I meant 2 million masks. And so we did that through the drive-through. So you didn't have to purchase anything from McDonald's, but you could buzz through the drive-through and grab some masks and go.
Thank you.
A pretty incredible situation that was. Quick question. How's the staffing situation looked like for you guys over the last 12 to 18 months? I know it's such a struggle for businesses across the country right now.
Yeah, it's been difficult. I mean, I touch base with a lot of franchisees, and it's been difficult on one sense, but the other sense, because the Inn restaurant was closed in dining, in a lot of cases, they only needed half their staff anyway. And I'm not sure if that social assistance program helped or hindered, because I think there was a lot of people who were reluctant to come back to work. And so that's where we ran into some difficulty. So yes, it's been a problem, I think, for every restaurateur.
Yeah, good point. So I know, Matt, you had a hard stop at 8:25 your time, and so we're coming up on that right now.
Yes.
Does anybody have any final questions or comments for Matt this morning?
It's Michael here in Winnipeg. Just one
Hi,
quick
Michael.
question. How you doing, Matt?
Great, thanks.
Good. You mentioned the gas station, and I'm not sure, were you involved in the Husky addition in East Winnipeg on Plessy Road? There's a drive-through that was added onto the existing Husky station there.
Yeah, I that's not my territory, but I'm heading into head office here in a couple minutes, so I'll be able to find out for you pretty quick.
I wasn't sure if you were involved in it, but it just was an incredibly creative and also attractive looking add-on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I couldn't believe it, just sort of came out of nowhere. and I was just wondering if you knew how it got franchised and what the genesis of that deal was. Is this a partnership you have with the different gas stations across the country? Was the gas station dealer maybe the franchisee in this instance? It was just that one was a great add-on for your brand in Winnipeg.
Yeah, so a little bit of both, Mike. So we've got great relationships with pretty much all the gas providers, whether it's even 7-Eleven, Petrocan, Esso. But yeah, in some cases, it is the franchisee who could be the landowner as well. And that was the case in Sundre. And so
Okay.
it's kind of a unique situation because you have less parties involved in the real estate transaction, and you can drive the deal a little bit more efficient. But yeah, I think you're going to see us in more gas locations in the future because of that. And you're right, Mike, we have to get creative in a lot of locations, and that site must have been really worth it for us to do what you're saying.
Yeah, it's a good corner, and it's kitty corner to the Sobeys. So it was one of those situations. I don't know the background, but the developer may have wanted to put a little too much density for a prototypical McDonald's to be across the street when they developed it. And so you went across, and you may have even done better than you would have on that other pad.
Right.
Which territories do you cover again?
I'm in Alberta.
Okay. I didn't know how far further afield you go.
Yeah. I think you would deal with Kyle
Yeah.
Mazzoni.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's mentioned your name a few times. So unfortunately, I got to get rolling here, everybody.
All right.
But I wish I had more time. And those were great questions, by the way.
Matt, thank you so much for your time this morning and for being part of our first ever CREC Talk Shop. If anyone thinks of more questions for Matt, his contact info will be shared in a follow-up email. So thank you so much. Please watch for details via email on the next CREC Talk Shop session coming up in November. Thank you again, Matt. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Bye, everyone.
And have a great rest of your week, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
Take care.